today's topic. We're starting a 2-week topic. Today's about relationships. This week, I thought we'd discuss what are relationships and how we enhance them and what do they mean to our lives and whatever more the group brings up here today. And then next week, we'll talk about what are sacred relationships, because there's definitely a difference in my experience with a sacred relationship versus just our normal everyday relationships. So for me, relationships are about engagement, call for us to express ourselves or to listen to the expression of others. And it's important, in my opinion, that we become authentic and real in our relationships. Sometimes, I've held positions that trying to be something I'm not, and in turn, it's been damaging to a relationship I've been in, trying to be something I'm not. So, I think that's one of the things that relationships has taught me is becoming more authentic and real. There's just a few other things I wanted to share with how what they've done for me. And then I want to hear about everybody else's opinion and spin on this. I've learned relationships have taught me about my triggers. When I'm in a relationship with a friend or my partner, there's times things will come up and it's upset me or it's made me happy, and all points in between. So relationships for me have mirrored back things to myself. They've mirrored things that I need to work on, or they've shown me aspects of myself. And through my triggers of getting excited or angry or any of them, anywhere in between. For me, when something bothers me or gets me excited, happy, sometimes it's good to look at that, because usually what's showing up through relationships is not the problem. The person in front of you pushing your buttons isn't the problem. We take that trigger and we go back to a different point in our life where maybe this started. You could be cruising along and Butch may say something to me and all of a sudden I feel wounded. It's not really what Butch is saying. He's a wonderful guy. He wouldn't purposely try to hurt me. It's more so that the relationship that we're having it's bringing up something from my past, and he's triggering something. So that's, for me, relationships have helped me a lot in my personal growth. And I think they're a really important part of being human, is to interact with people. And Butch has got a whole different spin on things too. What we were talking earlier this week, he's got some really cool points to add to to the group here today too. Relationships have helped me control my emotions and helped me become more gentle in my expressions. We'll say things that will, like I say, get me worked up. And through relationships, I've learned that, it's another person in front of me. I need to be gentle and kind and caring with that individual in front of me. So relationships have taught me ways to become more gentle, and that it's important to keep my emotions kind of in check. Not to deny them, but to not be controlled by them or let myself get overstimulated by them. And third, and this is more what we'll talk about next week, is they've taught me to see my connection with other people. They've brought out something deeper in me. For you guys, what does relationships mean to you?
It's a drawing out experience for me. Because when you only have very few relationships with people, no matter what they are, personal or work or whatever, it's very easy to project a very pristine image. You don't have to defend very much or guard against very much, but the more relationships you have, the more real you have to be. Because there's more people or more eyes that are looking at you, and if you're putting something out that isn't true, people are going to know eventually. The more relationships you have, the more true to who you are, I think you have to be. It's naturally going to happen, regardless of what you may intend.
I did a lot of studying on this week. I got a lot more to look into. And we're talking right now is past the beginning of relationships. Relationships, like I was talking to Ned and Cupcake, start in the mind. But then once I got looking deeper into it, they start in our heart. Our heart tells our mind what that relationship is going to be. Our relationships should start with our thoughts, because that's where the relationship is. That's where all your relationships start, is in your mind. And when you have a relationship, good relationship in your mind of yourself, then you can move on. And the main thing is have a good relationship with God. And by having a good relationship with God, then we can go on to other people, our partners. And in our relationships, this is just my opinion, then in our relationships, we should not want nothing from anybody else. What we give to other people, only hoping that they benefit from our relationship and become better people. What they give back to us is that much more. What we're getting back from them. But because I give them my love, I love myself, I love God, and I love my partner, I love Ned, I love everybody in this room. What they give me back is what they want. Anything that they do give me, I should be very grateful. That's what I'm finding in studying in this relationship. And it's so easy in our mind or in our heart to start judging before it actually happens. And I have to control that relationship and say, I'm open to this relationship and try to get the best out of it. Not wanting anything, hoping that I can help you, all you guys in this room. That is my feeling on relationships. And like I say, I got a lot more to go deeper with it. You know, like first time I met Tim, my opinion of Tim has expanded so much. I think he's a really great guy. I think he's a really great guy, and I'm learning from him. Maybe it might be that little bit, or it might be this whole bunch. And that's what relationships are. It's not just our spouse. Our spouse is a special, like you were saying. It's a special relationship. But we got to have the first part, love ourselves, love God, and love our spouse. Everything has its order. That's just my feelings.
I like what you say there about relationships start in the heart and then they go to the mind. Because we do. We meet somebody and we feel like we need to talk to this person.
Yeah.
And then it's interesting.
And that's what the day we went down to Bible study, and right away I took a liking to that man. Never met him before in my life, had I? You know, but he started talking to me. And I think he's got so much to offer to the world. And yeah.
Robbie?
Butch touched on one thing that struck a chord with me, was the judgment thing, which I believe is a component of the ego. You have to get that ego in check.
Yes.
Because I found in my past relationships, it was my ego that was the stumbling block in my relationships. It was my wanting, my needs, overshadowing what I really wanted out of a relationship. I had no idea what the ego was until later on in life. When I discovered what it was, I could look back on all my failures because of the ego.
Yes.
Got in the way. You know what I mean? But I had no way of controlling it. I didn't even know what it was. And I believe, one thing that I read one time about the ego was, the ego edged God out. That's so true. When you're in the grips of the ego, God's not even present at all. The ego is a false identification of who we think we are. And we're running our life in that regard, with no regard to other people, really. I find, when my ego is present, like you said, when somebody says something that offends you, I believe that's the ego. Getting ready to, sitting there in the lobby just waiting. Some people says that offensive thing, right away the ego stands up ready to battle. Getting the ego under check is one of the hardest things for me. You know what I mean? You have to tame it every day, because it comes up every day. People that you meet will say certain things that, like you said, it's a trigger right away, bang. The ego's ready to go to war. You know what I mean? For me, the ego's a big thing that you have to get under control for a healthy relationship, I believe.
I like that you point out that God's not there when you're...
Ego,
Yeah.
edged God out, it's simple. And it all ties together. It's so true. When the ego is present, God's not even around at all. You've completely edged it out.
Well, he's there, but we're
He's
not
there.
aware of it.
Exactly. We're not aware of it. Yeah. We put him on the back burner.
For
You know what
us,
I mean?
yeah.
I a lot of times say in my own mind, I say to my ego, I got this, you can sit in the lobby. You know what I mean? I got this, but you have to realize it right away when it's happening. You know what I mean? Once that trigger happens, you have to realize it right away. Put the ego in the lobby, I got this, Choose peace instead of this, that's it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's what you have to do.
I think that's a valid point, Rob. Like when the ego is not at the forefront of the mind, like we're not coming from that, it changes relationships. It helps us see our relation to other people, places, things. When, like, if you step into nature, we have relationships with not just people but places and things. If you look back in your mind, you'll have maybe favorite memories of places you've been. Now you have a relationship with that. Without the ego in place, a brilliance like a radiance shines forth.
Yes.
If you step into nature and you're caught in your head, which is the ego pulls us into the mind, and you miss what's in front of you. If you're surrendered and you're open, then you see your relationship to nature becomes a whole other thing.
Agree with like you have relationships with nature. You have relationships. Everything we really do, you have relationships with. Not just people. It's with nature. I remember Nancy, one of our first meetings, and she said, "I love smelling the flowers, going for a walk," and that's a relationship. That's soothing to our souls, and it brings us back to ourselves. That's my feelings,
Yes.
and I wish I could do that more. I wish I could I think it's great when somebody can slow themselves down and just enjoy life. The more I read about this stuff, find that has been lost through mechanisms of businesses and everything else. They don't want you having them relationships because you're not productive. But this young man here, like we talked the other day here, and he expresses himself so well. How we can be in touch with other people. We can be in touch with other people and benefit from all that stuff. It's all relationship.
Yes.
It really is. Do you not feel that way?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yep. Excuse me. No, it's great. Like even Ned and I, like it's always fun coming here when I get my tattoos. Like just the relationship that we go with one another, just talking about everything, like what's coming this week or what we feel just in general, and then the experience when Butch came, just reiterating it all and coming back to see what his input is on it and how much further Ned and I got more knowledge or experience. It's all those relationships. Like it's again to do with your ego. Like it's how much Ned and I talked about that too. Like it's just conscious all in your mind that allows yourself to, it's talking inside your head saying, oh, like you think this is superior, or it's that stereotypical stuff, where it's like kind of groups you want to fit in, like it's like that popular versus non-popular, and how it's all doesn't make sense anymore. Like it doesn't relate to anything these days. It's more like if you're choosing like ISIS over US or anything like that, it's all choices, and it's all what we choose to do with, again, like from the very first week of using self. Like if you're not fully confident with yourself 110%, then you can't make a strong and happy relationship with anybody.
That's right. You're right.
It all seems to be that little voice in the head, doesn't it? We have to tame that little voice in the head. It's always there, always chattering away. We have to bring silence to that. And you're so right, Butch, we just don't slow down and look at the clouds anymore like we used to when we were kids too, eh?
Right.
As well, or smell the flowers too.
Yeah.
You're right, we don't do that. We lose that beauty of nature. It's always there. It's always going to be there. We lose that.
Kids have a relationship with digital stuff or whatever, with electronics instead of people.
That's
So
it.
it's no wonder that there's so much lack of esteem in our teenagers. A lot of them are suicidal.
So true, Lisa, yeah.
There's not a lot of consciousness. They're losing consciousness.
I think the problem is technology is far outstripping humanity's wisdom.
Yes.
Very well put.
Very well.
You know, we have, it's like a 2-year-old with a flamethrower. Sure, he can use it, but you gonna trust him? It's the same thing with humanity and our technology. And I don't mean just weapons, I mean technology in general.
Yes.
Cell phones is a prime example.
Yes. Yes.
You know, I lived my entire life without one. Now, if I lose it for half an hour, I'm freaking out.
Yeah.
Don't you think the parents, because they lead, it has to be their job to turn that around, or to bring more consciousness to kids?
Actually, in our case, it was the kids that led us to the cell phones. They had cell phones like 10 years before I did.
Mine as well. Mine as well.
But, you know, but then again, my kids are scattered all over the globe. So that's my main thing about being attached to my phone right now.
Yeah.
But as far as relationships goes, I think every little relationship I've had, the ones that have been based in the ego, it's been what can I get out of it? And when I finally gave up my ego and started looking at forming positive relationships, it's what can I give to this? Because I know what I'm going to give to it, I'm going to get back. That's why I was so excited when Ned asked me to join the group. And it's like, yes, finally. You know what? I've been throwing it out there, and now I'm getting it back. So like this is a positive relationship that I want to cultivate for as long as I possibly can. And it's all based on need, I think. Deep down, I feel I need to grow spiritually for me to grow personally. And that will lead into financially and everything else. So like again, it's the three-way, the three aspects of it, and relationships are, to me, now at this point in my life, is what can I give? What can I give to the relationship? How am I going to empower that person to do whatever it is they're doing? Even if it's just sitting there and listening to them tirade or rant. Because I've found a lot of times that if I just shut up, that's all I need to do. And that reinforces the relationship by actually not doing anything. And it's easy giving up the ego, the need to do something. You know what I mean? So it's just
I think you're right, John.
Going with the flow and letting the relationship, if you pay attention to it, the interaction will tell you how you should proceed.
And that's exactly the point. I think relationships, it's a give and take. It's a back and forth. In my past relationships, it was always a demand for what I wanted and what I needed. You walk into the post office and we place a demand on the postmaster. I need stamps. Gimme, and I walk into a variety store and say, I need this, I need that. You're never engaging the people that I was coming in front of. Or take it to nature. I would go to nature and say, give me everything. I wouldn't sit back and give back to nature. I think relationship calls us to find a balance between that give and take. When we get better at relationships, we walk into the post office and we look the person in the eye and we say, how are you today? And, you know, are you having a good day? And maybe respond to what they say versus just walking in with a demand and a need. Relationships have taught me my hardest lesson has been to listen more than I talk.
I don't learn anything when I'm talking.
True, that's a key component in that, being a good listener. How many times do you talk to people that you know they're not even listening to you? They're processing information they want to tell you. And you know they're not even, they actually call that alternating monologue, when people aren't even listening to you. They can't wait to tell you their point of view without listening. It was just so true. Being a good listener is the biggest thing. You don't meet many people that are good listeners. You just can't wait to tell you their things that have happened and events that have happened without truly listening.
It's true.
That's a good point. I like that, John. Being a good listener. Absolutely. Yes. Very important.
Timmy?
Excuse me, I think that
Recorder's actually not picking up anything you're saying.
us in the maybe are from our heart, and like when you guys, everybody was talking, I was thinking of, you know, going with the flow and sometimes not saying something. And I think of, as a kid, and I just love the springtime because it floods, and as a kid I would build ditches and let the water be free, go to where it's supposed to go in the low-lying areas. And then you put a stick in there, and the stick would go along, and next thing you know, you pick up another blade of grass or something, then it'd go along and pick up a hair or something. And this is that's how our lives are. You know, relationships. You know, you can learn, sometimes bad, but in each relationship, you go through and you go, "Well, that was a learning curve." Man, I'm glad I didn't say in that one, because you learn yourself better, about yourself better, and then you get in a relationship. Oh, this is a keeper, and it don't work out. Something happens. You know, it wasn't no fault of yours, but sometimes things happen, but you can draw on that, over that piece of grass. You go with it, and sometimes saying something is a good thing. Sometimes being quiet's the best thing, and that's how relationships build. And next thing you know, that little twig, as it's going out in that flooded area, it's kind of like a little, almost a raft, because it's gathered so much life, things, relationships, and things that stick to it, and it'll build, and it'll end up going down the river, and it'll be a massive goo or whatever. And that's our life. Is we are drawn in our relationships. We can feed from each other, good, bad, you know, pretty, ugly, whatever. And our relationship, as we grow older, we can pick from that, you know. I had a relationship, and that's a good thing. And then somebody offends us, you go, because that's when our, what'd you say?
Ego.
Ego. Our ego goes, no, stop. You don't want to fight, do you? And that's the first thing I want to do. And I've learned that that's a trigger. Somebody offends me, I go, hey, well, he's probably meaning, flip it, defuse it. You know, he's kind. He's trying to bring the best out of me. Whatever you do to defuse the situation, and then that relationship, instead of a negative, becomes a positive. That guy's my friend. You'll find that you have, through life, it's not so tough if you just allow life to happen.
Yes.
That stick going down the creek ends up being a floating vessel. And that's what we all are, vessels of God to help one another learn life to the fullest. That's my...
Yes.
What a great analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Great.
yeah, that was very
Beautiful.
good. Very good.
Yeah.
Well put. Yes, I did that very same thing. As a kid. And it was in the stick. Perfect.
I can see how that's true for me, because no matter what my interaction is or my relationship with another is, good, bad, everything in between, that is stuck to me a little bit, and it's shaped and changed me and helped me grow. And that points to exactly the beginning, is relationships offer us growth. There's so much growth for us in relationships, and they don't have to be just positive ones or intimate relationships or long-standing relationships.
It can be loss of relationship too. You can learn
Yeah, you can learn a lot by losing a friend.
a new one.
You can lose a lot. You can learn a lot about yourself. Ultimately, I think they strengthen us as long as we're able to eventually rise above and remove the ego from it. Our ego wants to always hang on and control and maintain everything the way it is in its little box.
I think it's easier when somebody gets into an argument with you, if you're arguing technicalities, that's one thing. But I found, especially on Facebook, people go for the personal attack right off the bat. And it's easy when you're sitting on a typewriter to be nonchalant about it, but when you're standing in front of somebody, and I found when all of a sudden they start attacking you personally, whatever the argument's about doesn't matter. I've come to believe that that's a sign that they're hurting inside a lot. Mm-hmm. And they're trying to hurt somebody else to alleviate some of their own pain. So I've tried very hard in my relationships, and I still have a few that are less than optimum, we'll say. Then I'm going to try to turn around and turn those into positive relationships. I don't know how it's going to work. It's going to be a hard road to hoe, but if I'm going to grow in my relationships that I have now, I have to deal with them. Because they're like a big sore in my backside. They're covered up right now with a Band-Aid, but they're still there. You know, I haven't dealt with it yet, and I deal with those. Like, this is an easy relationship because we're all very like-minded and want to learn from each other.
Good point. Yeah.
You get into a relationship, especially like at work. A lot of times I've worked at several places where it's been very adversarial, the relationship.
Yes.
And that's where my two biggest ones are that I have to try to fix. I don't have to, but I'm going to. And I'm not looking forward to it. I'm not looking forward to the process. I'm looking forward to the end result because I want us to be friends afterwards. But I know there's going to be a big punch up and dust up in the meantime, and I'm not looking forward to that. But I think it's a relationship for me personally I need to do. For me to grow in other relationships, I need to at least try to fix this one.
It always brings me back to a relationship with self again, because
Yeah.
Yes.
everybody is a mirror for us, right?
I got to live with this guy.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
That's right.
so how I treat you is how I'm treating myself.
Yeah.
And if I've got angst against somebody, then there's something in here that's hurting that I'm trying to heal.
That's your personal relationship.
Yeah. And yeah, so my anger towards somebody else is, I think, is a reflection of the pain that's in here. And once I heal this, that doesn't matter. You know, that's not going to be a negative issue anymore.
Whatever bothers you about someone else is because it's already in you. If it didn't exist, you wouldn't know you wouldn't know what it even was. You wouldn't
Yeah.
recognize it. So
In relationships, a lot of times we don't know what we want, especially in the younger years. So, like kids, they'll form relationships with everybody because they don't know what they want. So they just like big shotgun effect. Let's see who I resonate with. And as you get older and older and older, you narrow your focus. And I narrowed my focus to like this. So I had about 4 people in my relationship circle. So I didn't grow for a long time. And once I found out that I was miserable because everybody around me was miserable. I had a miserable relationship. We were a bunch of miserable people feeding off of each other. So I got tired of it and I started expanding out looking for other relationships. And I had no idea how to do it. I just went out.
You got a good point there about when you're younger, you just form relationships.
Yeah, automatically.
Because you have no holds or no expectations.
Yeah.
You just want to get out and you want to meet people and you form that, geez, I'm given to this person, and the next thing you know, they're given to you, and you, as you get older, you're right, you do start isolating.
Well, and kids, they want to know who they are, so they need something to be something against. You know what I mean? Like, if all there is white, red's the concept. It's not a reality. So kids, they'll say, want to be friends? Okay. 20 minutes later, they might hate each other's guts or be terrified of each other. But then initially, it's like, I don't know who I am, so let's see how I reflect with you. You know what I mean? Like, I have a good relationship with Ned, but I might meet you in the street, you might catch me on a bad day. Completely different relationship, and then we show up here, and I'm like, crap. You know what I mean? So like, that's my train, but like with kids, they need something to reflect who they are. They need to find out who they are. So they congregate and they form these relationships to see how they react towards somebody else.
Yes.
You know, if they don't resonate, then they just move on to a different.
But in that relationship, what we're doing, the way you're talking, is then we form a relationship, and of course some break off, and it goes back to not giving. If that relationship breaks off, you can see things start to fail. It's because now we're starting to put demands.
Yeah.
And if you can just go with the flow, and like you said, everybody here said, just listen and let that flow go down the river, then that relationship will strengthen. And if you don't, you start putting demands on it, you start putting roadblocks up.
Yeah.
Right?
It's almost
And
like,
that's what kills relationships.
it's almost like love with limitations.
Yeah.
It's saying that. You're right. Yeah, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're right.
How do we mend relationships? Say we, and I think because I've struggled with relationships in the past, and eventually I've found peace with those relationships that I've struggled with. How do we, if we're having a bad relationship with someone, how do we mend that?
I'm gonna have to go up and say, can we talk?
Talking, communication.
That's
the first
it.
thing.
That's
the first thing.
To me, that's the easiest one. Can we talk? It's a simple yes or no question. You know, there's no emotional context. It's like, can we exchange information?
What about if we've already talked about it? Because I see how in the past I'd have relationships with people, and we would talk, and then nothing would change, and we'd talk some more, and nothing would change. How do we?
You gotta, but then people also have to give too.
Good point.
You can forgive or just let things go, and that isn't helping. No matter what relationship it is, it's not helping it. You can give all you want until they start wanting to give. I know we shouldn't ask for anything, but we can forgive all we want. If that other person don't want to give back or to form that relationship, you're beat.
Well, if
You shit out of luck.
If the relationship's not progressing, if it's not growing,
Yep.
it's stagnant.
Yeah.
Why?
And you can try all you want. It's not going to happen.
Some people just won't grow. They don't want to.
That's right. Yep.
You know, whether they're afraid or they're comfortable, whatever it is. Sometimes there's relationships you just gotta say, "Oh, I wish you the best, and
Yeah.
I hope in the future we can become friends."
So there's two things: communication, and the second thing, being able to identify when a relationship is over.
Yeah, and that comes back to your relationship with yourself. What am I willing to put up with? Where's my stop point? You know, okay, I'm sorry, but there's other people out there that are looking for what I have to give, and they've got what I'm looking for.
Want a healthy balance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, like I don't like capers, those little vegetables, whatever. I can't stand them, so I'm not going to eat them. It's like relationships. Some people are capers to me. Sorry. There's other people out there. There's 7.5 billion people. I'm sure you can find something else besides me. There's not very many of those, but there are some.
What about?
And-
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
What about the power of intention? Like changing something within ourselves, being willing to, before we encounter that person again.
Very good.
It's an energy thing too, right?
Yeah, where you're coming from is very, very important.
Yeah, and instead of having being stuck on in a position yourself, or not being open, you think you know already how things are going to go or what that person's about. But if you change your energy before you arrive at someone, ever tried that, you can see the effect it has on them. They soften, even if they don't know why. So
Yeah.
I would, for myself, I would do that first before saying,
Good
hey, you
point.
want to talk, or...
Good point.
So
Good starting point.
there's another point.
Very good one. Yeah.
Yeah, and And that's sort of the point, like, Lisa and I, we do this all the time. We notice how we have a subtle relationship with somebody that we don't know. Maybe it's a brief interaction, they come once, or it's a telephone call, and we'll notice that there's a judgment already in place, that we're hanging on to something about that relationship with that person. And so we practice all the time letting go of the concept of who's in front of us, and addressing them, changing ourselves internally, and setting up a more loving dynamic in ourselves to embrace the person in front of us.
I would say it happens quite a bit, actually, that we've been practicing that. An example would be when somebody calls, because I always answer the phone and do all the scheduling for everyone. They might be quite nasty and demanding. Not too often, but it does happen sometimes, and they just want to speak to their artist, not me. And then you meet them in person. I might get a little bit roused, and then I practice changing my idea of who they might be. Sure enough, every time, almost pretty much every time, when they come here in person, it's completely different.
Yeah.
Yeah, it shows
Yes,
up
Lisa,
again and
because-
again and again.
Because sometimes they could be just having that bad day.
Yeah,
That bad moment when they called you.
they don't feel cared for, whatever
Right.
it is. Yeah,
Right, so they're taking it out on you.
yeah.
But like you said, when you meet them though, it's totally different because that moment's past for them.
I wouldn't want to be, on a bad day for me, if I'm really emotional, I wouldn't want to be held to that.
So this takes us back to the beginning of what Butch was saying, how relationships start in the heart, they start in the mind. And so I think to enhance our relationships with others, it's important to let go of the mind. And it's important to let go and allow whatever's in front of you to show you what it is, versus our preconceived notions of what's in front of us.
Well said.
Sponsoring thought versus controlling thought. The original intention, the original thought is either based in fear or love. I believe anyway. So if you're angry, all the so-called negative emotions or thoughts, I believe, are based in fear. Fear of loss, fear of pain, whatever it is. But if your sponsoring thought comes out of love, what can I give to this, how can I help? Versus the controlling thought of how can I shift them into what I want. It's a subtle shift in thinking, but I think it's also very profound. And it will drastically change, like Lisa said, the outcome of your interaction, of your relationship, even if it's for that day.
Ned
Yep.
and I are really quick to see now if somebody's that way. We always say to each other, that person needs more love. And that's the end of it.
Yeah.
I think another really valid point when it comes to relationships is that we only see a sliver of that person, and it's not our job to assess and judge and fit every person we meet into a little box so that we understand them. It's our job to let go and allow our friends or whatever relationships come to us, let them show us. So relationships for me has taught me to surrender my mind, allow my relationships with others to teach me what they're about versus me determining what they're about. Because in a relationship, I've noticed in my relationship with people, it doesn't matter who's in front of me. There's moments where maybe sometimes I need to say something. I need to say, be a teacher to them in that moment. And then there's, in the next moment, it may mean that I need to be a student of whoever's in front of me. And it's a more genuine and honest approach. None of us are above each other. I'm not above anybody. I'm of the same cloth that everybody's made of as well. And I can learn just as much from another as they can learn from me.
I was, like I told you fellas, I was doing quite a bit of reading since the three of us got together. And in Charles Darwin, he made a report about, because he studied animals. And in his report, he mentioned 4 times that people or animals are aggressive like people. Like they try to dominate. But and everybody forgot that he mentioned 72 times in his report that all animals or all beings love each other. Nobody picked that up. If you take a herd of deers will not, if they want to go have water, 1 or 2 maybe want to go, but none will move until over 51% the majority decide to go have a drink of water or change their feeding pattern. They have to have over that percentage, and they all do that through their own relationships. And that's what Darwin said. It's because they all join together with just through their thoughts.
They need each other.
I know this is getting a little deep, but that's what he claimed. But as people, we decided that aggression, that 4%, was far more important. But it isn't. Just like this group, we're all on the same wavelength. And we're forming relationships right now. And I think good ones. Mm-hmm. But somebody from the outside could look at us and say, oh my gosh, that's wrong, and have a dirty idea about it. You know? And which one would they listen to? Us as a group will listen to each other, but that outside will pick up that 1%, right?
Mm-hmm. That's the tendency of the mind.
Yeah.
The mind has a strong propensity.
It's
to
where
go
your
to
heart is.
To go to negative, though.
Yes.
You'll pick up negative things, and that's all the more the reason to be vigilant in your practice of letting go of your need to go to the negative thoughts.
And that's what I think about relationships. If we can let go of our ego and just say, I really want to know everybody here. I want to form a good relationship. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to really practice that. Mm-hmm. And I think I'm going to have a lot better relationships out of it. I really am.
No, this is beautiful. I agree, Nate. This is the best thing I did to come down here today.
Well, thank you. That's great. I think we all appreciate that.
Love in this room is the same love.
I can conclusively say that whenever I'm having a war with myself, my other relationships are affected in almost direct proportion to the conflict that's going on in my own head. That's how much difficulty I have with other relationships. So usually, like, I used to disappear, not like gone, but I would just withdraw for several weeks at a time because I knew that I'm wrestling with something and there's no point in me going out with the guys because I'm going to get in a fight with somebody. So, you know, and I didn't need that extra stress on me. So I've learned over the years that what's going on up here will pretty much determine how my relationship with everybody else. So a lot of times I might avoid people just so I don't trigger something in myself that will cause a conflict that I'm going to have to apologize for later on. You know, like preemptive, whatever. I know there's a problem sometimes, so I try to avoid it until I can deal with it.
We also have
When you said when you have like a bad moment or a bad day, and it made me think of, in school we're learning about the structural functionalism theory, and basically it's every individual themselves and people around them as a whole together. So each individual, all together, we're a whole. Mm-hmm. And as soon as one person is affected, whether it be negatively or positively, it affects each and every. If one breaks down, then the whole relationship part breaks down to build it back up. So it really reminded me of that.
Good.
We're meant to have good relationships, I think.
Yeah.
We're trying.
Very good.
And that's what I really want to touch on next week too, about sacred relationships. There's going to be a lot of talking about just what you're saying there, the interconnectedness between us and how they affect relationships. Relationships are so important in life, and not just the fact that they're teachers for us, but they're important to know ourselves And it's through my relationship with every one of you guys and everybody that comes in my life that I've gotten to know myself better. And knowing myself is the greatest gift I've ever found. Because once I know myself, I automatically feel drawn to know God. When
You said that.
when we turn inward, there's just a natural urge to look to God, and that's
A beautiful relationship.
one of the most sacred, beautiful relationships we can have. Next week, when we talk about sacred relationships, we're going to bring God into the equation a lot more. We're going to talk about how the presence of God kept in mind with a relationship, how it really changes the dynamic of relationships. And next week I got a lot of stuff I want to share, but I want you to take this week and really take that in. What is a sacred relationship? How does my relationship with another change if I include God? How does it change the dynamic? Think about that this week. Ultimately, if we're struggling in relationships and we find conflict, it's just another message for us to come home and look at ourselves. Come home and heal our own hearts. Heal our relationship with ourselves. And the world outside of you may be just pretty much perfect as it is.